Color forms the pillar of magic, dividing different strengths and weaknesses between different groups of cards. Each color comes with a clear philosophy, aesthetic, and mechanical identity. Yet, over the years, some cards have been printed that totally break with what their color is supposed to do. Some of them come from an era when the color pie was less clearly defined. Others are outright design mistakes. Let's kick off with Witch Hunter from the Dark. This is a curious design for white, letting you both bounce creatures and deal direct damage to your opponent, two effects that normally live in blue and red respectively. Next up is Primal Order. This 4-mana green enchantment reads, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, this enchantment deals damage to that player equal to the number of non-basic lands they control. Traditionally, punishing players for running non-basic lands or dealing damage straight to the face are hallmarks of red. Primal Order disregards that entirely by combining both abilities in a mono-green shell. Psychic Transfer says, if the difference between your life total and target player's life total is 5 or less, exchange life totals with that player. Life Drain almost always shows up in black, making Psychic Transfer a real oddball. Ramping up mana production from lands is overwhelmingly a green speciality, while fast mana is in red's wheelhouse, which makes High Tide an unusual blue spell, and a very powerful one. Achroma Angel of Wrath is a fan favorite thanks to her onslaught of combat abilities, but she's notable for being the only mono-white creature with haste in the entire game. Suture Priest lets you gain life when your creatures enter the battlefield, which is a standard white effect. But its second clause is where things get strange. Opponents lose life when their creatures enter the battlefield. While taxing creature plays is familiar territory for white, see Authority of the Consuls, outright draining life is far more aligned with black. You see it in Orzhov cards, but rarely in mono-white. This 6-mana blue sorcery says, target player reveals their hand and discards all non-land cards. Discard is a firmly black mechanic, which makes Amnesia feel alien in blue. It's pricey for the effect, but blue's suite of bounce spells like Cyclonic Rift and Chain of Vapor make it sneakily strong. Bounce a threat, then strip it away with Amnesia, turning temporary bounce into permanent destruction. We think of Armageddon as an iconic white card, but mass land destruction is traditionally the province of red, with occasional black or green examples. While white is all about balance and symmetrical effects, tearing down mana bases is unusual for the color. A similar example is balance. On the surface, it feels thematic for white, enforcing parity across the board. But when you look closer, its sacrifice mechanics resemble black far more than white. Normally, a white catch-up spell like Land Tax would help lagging players without cutting others down. Balance, by contrast, levels the field by force. This is one of the oddest counterspells in Magic. For only 2 black mana, Dash Hopes presents your opponent with a brutal choice. Lose a big chunk of life, or let their spell get countered. Black isn't meant to have access to cheap burn or counterspells, though the card designers would probably argue that the fact that it gives your opponent a choice makes Dash Hopes more of a bend than a break. Black gets another unusual counter here with Withering Boon. Unlike Dash Hopes, this one isn't conditional. It just flatly denies a creature spell at the cost of 3 life. Essence Scatter in a black frame, essentially. Life loss is trivial compared to shutting down a major threat, making this card a bold intrusion into blue's territory, though the argument in defense of it would be that black already has the power to kill creatures. Withering Boon is just doing so while the creature is still on the stack. Transformation effects that strip abilities and turn creatures into harmless permanents usually belong to blue or white. Song of the Dryads does this in green, locking down threats by making them into forests. It even enables quirky synergies, like giving an opponent a forest so your forest walk creatures can sneak through. Functional removal in green is rare enough, but this approach is wildly uncharacteristic, though the flavor does make sense. Counterspells are practically synonymous with blue, which is why Mana Tithe catches so many people off guard. It can counter any spell, so long as the opponent can't pay an extra 1 mana. Its Force Spike color shifted to white. Again, the argument in defense of this card would be that white is the color of tax effects, so Mana Tithe fits within that design space. Either way, the card is still one of the nastiest surprises that white has to offer. A similar case is Esper Sentinel, which also tries to frame itself as a tax effect and thus permissible. Echoing blue staples like Mystic Remora and Rhystic Study, the Sentinel doesn't churn out quite as many cards as those, but in a white deck desperate for card advantage, it's a tremendous tool. The updated text of Debt of Loyalty is as follows: regenerate target creature. You gain control of that creature if it regenerates this way. So you permanently gain control of that creature, but only if it would be destroyed and is saved by the regeneration. Flavor-wise, you're saving the creature's life, for which it repays you by joining your side. Still, those sorts of abilities are really Red's thing. Another example of white dabbling in steal your creature effects, Evangelize offers a buyback option that lets you repeat the process if you have enough mana. It's clunky and situational, but in Commander, where boards get clogged with fatties, this can turn into a recurring headache for opponents. Here's a bit of trivia for you. This card is a callback to the old Preacher. Essentially fog in black clothing, darkness provides protection from combat damage where you'd least expect it. White usually gets these kinds of effects, as does green to a lesser extent. Darkness's uniqueness explains why it's so pricey. You can't get them for less than $8 a pop, despite the fact that they were initially printed at common. Direct damage is Red's bread and butter, occasionally leaking into black via drain effects, or white when tied to combat tricks, but green almost never. Yet Bee Sting and its cousin Hornet Sting, they're inefficient, but their mere existence defies expectations. Mark Rosewater himself has since described this card as a mistake. Protecting permanents with counter-like effects isn't unheard of in green, but Avoid Fate takes it further by outright negating a spell targeting one of your permanents. Compared to soft protection spells like Ranger's Guile, this card feels sharper and more absolute, a clear bend for the color. Life in exchange for card advantage is a hallmark of black, not green. Yet here's Sylvan Library, a repeatable engine that lets you sculpt your hand or draw extra cards at the cost of 4 life a card. It's undeniably powerful, and a relic from an era where the color's roles weren't so clearly defined. Blue is supposed to be the most cerebral of colors, focused on counterspells, trickery, and manipulation, not raw damage. Nevertheless, Psionic Blast is exactly that, a straight-up burn spell in blue. Even more bizarre, the earliest pinger, Prodigal Sorcerer, was also blue. In Blast's case, the card designers tried to balance the breakage by having the card shock you as well. Both of these cards were later reprinted in red. Green taking extra turns? That's not supposed to happen, but Seed Time makes it possible. It's basically a green time walk if your opponent happens to be playing anything blue and instant speed. Yes, it's heavily conditional, but when it works, it offers green an ability normally reserved for Magic's most powerful blue spells. That kind of temporal manipulation is the last thing you'd expect from the color of big creatures and mana ramp. Blue typically relies on bounce, counters, or theft to handle creatures, not outright exile. Phyrexian and Jester ignores that rule by banishing a creature entirely and then absorbing its power to fuel its own stats. The exile clause feels white, while the size boost leans green, leaving the card straddling 2 abilities blue isn't supposed to have. Black is terrible at dealing with enchantments, and it can't deal with artifacts at all. Phyrexian Tribute, however, ignores that, allowing you to destroy an artifact at the cost of 3 mana and 2 creatures sacrificed. It's admittedly costly and awkward, but it still breaks one of the most rigid color pie rules. If giving black counterspells is odd, giving it extra turns is even stranger. Temporal extortion offers your opponent a dilemma: either let you take another turn, or pay half their life to prevent it. Green's creature removal usually comes through fight or bite mechanics, requiring one of your creatures to tussle with another. Beast Within skips all that and just outright destroys a permanent, replacing it with a 3/3 token. It's flexible, unconditional, and doesn't demand any setup, all very unusual for green. Mark Rosewater has also since dubbed Beast Within a mistake, saying that it should have been white. The card Generous Gift was printed in Modern Horizons as a fixed version of the card. Dismember lets virtually any deck wield efficient removal. The fact that a mono-green deck can slot it in and suddenly have cheap, near-universal creature removal is a huge break from the pie. This is one of the clearest examples of how Phyrexian mana warps color identity, and its wide play is proof of its power. An even more striking color pie break facilitated by Phyrexian mana comes in Mental Misstep. By using life rather than blue mana, it becomes a universal, colorless, free counter for 1-mana spells. Simply putting a blue frame around it doesn't keep it in color pie bounds. This is a counter any deck can play, and that makes it one of the most egregious pie violations ever printed. It's banned in both Modern and Legacy for a reason. Until next time, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and consider joining my Patreon. And let me know of any other big color pie breaks in the comments.